Yeah, I think we firstly need to acknowledge this is an example of collaboration working, where all the key parties have come together. They've forgone local roading projects in favour of funding the Waikato Expressway as the single biggest roading improvement in our region. So we've doubled the investment by central government into our transport in the region through that collaborative process. So attracting about $2 billion of government investment into the Waikato Expressway. What it means is two things. Firstly, it will reduce traffic flows going through our various towns where the state highway currently passes through Hamilton City or some of the local towns. And so it should improve the pleasantness, attractiveness of those local roads. The second thing is that it will improve the travel time between Auckland and Hamilton. So it will probably take over half an hour off the trip between the two centres. The consequence of that is that it will increase the attractiveness of people to live in Hamilton or other Waikato towns but work in Auckland. So it will probably increase commuting pressure, so that will put pressure on Waikato housing. So some of the potentially high house prices that you're currently seeing in Auckland may eventually flow into our region as the Waikato becomes closer to Auckland in effect for commuting purposes. So, and probably the other main benefit is economic, because the Waikato doesn't have a seaport. We either have to have imports and exports through Auckland or through the Bay of Plenty, and so it's very important economically to have some good access between the Waikato and our neighbouring regions. So in that respect, the expressway is very important.
I don't know if I like the idea of us getting a bit closer to Auckland, but there is definitely a lot of benefits there, and there are a lot more Aucklanders moving to Hamilton already, and it's not even completely finished.
That's true, that's true. One thing that we do need to keep an eye on the ball about is the housing developments just south of Auckland. In actual fact, Pukekohe, Franklin area, some of those are quite large scale, and what we're seeing is more traffic entering the state highway, travelling north to Auckland at those points. And certainly we don't want to undermine the investment of the state highway such that the congestion starts to creep south again. We believe that Waikato is a great place to live and work and play, and that what could happen is people could elect to live in the Waikato themselves and look at setting up businesses here as well, rather than all roads leading to Auckland.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more potential benefits to be seen in the future.
We've got plenty of land, we've got plenty of residential, commercial, industrial land, quite close to the state highway and quite close to the railway, so people can freight their goods to Auckland or to the Bay of Plenty. A great place to live and work, the Waikato.
Yeah. And I think the other positive benefit of the expressway is around reducing car crashes, and we've seen recently some major fatalities on our roads, and so by having a nice 4-lane road with minimal entry points onto that road should reduce the crashes on our state highways.
Yes, you're right. There have been quite a number of fatalities, even around the Matamata Piako district too.
Yes.
It's very saddening, and it's something to think about.
It is, and that's a key focus of our roading improvement. We know where the hotspots are, and we're rolling out a program to deal with those hotspots to reduce the death and injury from the roads.
We'll be back with more after the break. Welcome back to Central News. The long-term plan from the Waikato Regional Council has just been released for public consultation, and roading is a key issue. I've got Paula, Southgate and Vaughan, Payne in studio. Now, we've had a big talk about the improvements on the Waikato Expressway to Auckland. Now, what about on the southern end? How are the routes to the Bay of Plenty going to be improved or upgraded?
Well, they're definitely on the radar as far as improvements, because I think while we recognise the importance of the ports of Auckland for getting freight out of New Zealand and as a port to all of our other communities as well, we absolutely recognise the Bay of Plenty and the importance of the port in terms of getting our goods out and about to market.
So there is a collaboration occurring between not just the Bay of Plenty, but all councils throughout the Upper North Island. We're working through a group called the Upper North Island Strategic Alliance, so that goes right through from Northland, Auckland, Waikato and the Bay of Plenty working together to understand how we rely on each other, particularly around transport and freight, and making sure that we understand where the bottlenecks are across the Upper North Island, and putting plans in place with central government, the Transport Agency, Kiwi Rail, to make some strategic investments across the Upper North Island to make sure that we're well connected. So that will probably inform any alternative routes and improvements between the Waikato and the Bay of Plenty, and also the Waikato and to the south towards Taranaki as well.
And will the road cause more congestion on the Southern Motorway?
In our view, that's probably a major threat to the Waikato and the investment that central government's made in the expressway, because the last thing that we want is for that major corridor to the north being clogged up with commuter traffic from perhaps poor land use planning within the Auckland region. So a lot of Auckland's growth is coming to the south, a lot of their housing developments are to the south, but we're not seeing a lot of alternative roads besides the Southern Motorway being planned to cope with that growth to the south. And also concerned about the rail impacts as well, because that rail corridor is also very important, not just for the Waikato, but the Bay of Plenty. So very important that we work closely with the Auckland Council to ensure that they're protecting that investment.
And I was going to mention the same thing, that rail is an important part. We've recognised for a long time that getting some of the freight off roads, we don't want all the freight going on bigger, longer trucks, heavier trucks. We want to get some freight off road and onto rail. And so we're having conversations north-south, but we're also having conversation about rail movement from east to west over to the Bay of Plenty as well. In fact, we've already invested in some improvements to rail in the Bay of Plenty, alongside the Bay of Plenty, that have sped up the number of trains that can go through east to west. And those are the kinds of things that we'd be looking at again.
Yeah, I think if you look at New Zealand's rail system, my understanding is that the rail network from Hamilton to Tauranga is the most profitable rail network in the whole of New Zealand, or line. And I recall for about $10 million, the Waikato councils worked with the Bay of Plenty councils and Kiwi Rail and doubled the capacity of that rail line for $10 million. So again, the benefits and merits of working together to resolve our issues.